Welcome, Slayer. As you know, there are technology addicts about, and you are the cure. If you'll be so kind as to watch this briefing.
Attention, zombie slayers. As you may have heard, Dr. Shapiro has gone mad with power. In his attempt to create the perfect lab assistant, he developed an app that tapped into the limbic system of students who use it. This app was supposed to make students have a better understanding of the mind-numbing IBM statistics software, but instead it turned them into technology zombies. Dr. Shapiro is using this app to take over science too. To begin, here is some background information on addiction. The DSM-5 states the substance-related disorders encompass 10 separate classes of drugs. These 10 classes are not fully distinct. All drugs that are taken in excess have in common direct activation of the brain reward system, which is involved in the reinforcement of behaviors and the production of memories. They produce such an intense activation of the reward system that normal activities may be neglected. Instead of achieving reward system activation through adaptive behaviors, drugs of abuse directly activate the reward pathways. The pharmacological mechanisms by which each class of drugs produces reward are different, but the drugs typically activate the system and produce feelings of pleasure, often referred to as a high. Furthermore, individuals with lower levels of self-control, which may reflect impairment of brain inhibitory mechanisms, may be particularly predisposed to develop substance use disorders, suggesting that the roots of substance use disorders for some persons can be seen in behaviors long before the onset of actual substance use itself. Nicotine is a commonly consumed drug, often consumed through smoking cigarettes. There are many existing studies on nicotine addiction. Carlson describes nicotine addiction as compulsive drug use. People who regularly use tobacco, for instance, are that of compulsive drug users. The site of action in the brain that is affected by nicotine is the nicotinic ACH receptor, which is an agonist. Nicotine increases the amount of dopaminergic neurons of the mesolimbic system. It causes dopamine to be released in the nucleus accumbens. Nicotine is a drug that is subject to withdrawal. When a consistent smoker pauses usage, withdrawal symptoms quickly appear. According to the National Library of Medicine, nicotine withdrawal symptoms include headache, nausea, fatigue, insomnia, irritability, difficulty concentrating, anxiety, depressed mood, increased hunger, and nicotine cravings. With non-substance addiction, gambling. Non-substance addictions can be defined as a behavioral disorder, also called behavioral addiction, not related to any substance of abuse that shares some features with substance-induced addiction. Gambling disorder, otherwise known as pathological gambling, is a psychiatric condition characterized by persistent and recurrent maladaptive patterns of gambling behavior, leading to impaired functioning. It is associated with reduced quality of life, high rates of bankruptcy, divorce, and incarceration.
These zombies aren't your typical horror film undead beings. The tech zombie brain is very much active and alive. The area of focus lies within a part of the limbic system called the mesolimbic dopamine system, or reward system. As we already know, the limbic system is involved in motivation, emotion, learning, and memory. Major areas of the reward system include the ventral tegmental area, nucleus accumbens, basal ganglia, hippocampus, and the frontal cortex. The ventral tegmental area is the very site of dopaminergic neurons that tells the organism whether stimulus is rewarding or aversive. The dopaminergic neurons then project themselves onto the nucleus accumbens. Once activated, this will result in the release of dopamine. The basal ganglia plays a unique role in different aspects of reward processing and evaluation of outcomes, including the reward value, anticipation, predictability, and risk. The hippocampus is important for declarative memory, which also means it can establish memories of drug experiences, important in terms of relapse for addicts. Finally, we come to the frontal cortex of the brain, involved in executive control over the choices made in the environment, for example, to seek out a reward. According to Grant and Chamberlain, in a gambling disorder, you can observe diminished ventral striatum and ventral medial function. Multiple neurotransmitters have been noted when it comes to addiction. Neurotransmitter imbalances within the system have been shown to influence both behavioral and substance addiction. The one most prevalent within the reward system is dopamine, which is involved with learning, motivation, and the salience of stimuli, which includes reward. Alterations done to the dopamine pathways have been proposed as the underlying reason to seek rewards, as with gambling or nicotine addiction, because it triggers dopamine's release and creates the sensation of pleasure so often experienced by those with addiction. Serotonin also plays its role in those with substance and non-substance addiction. It is related to emotion, mood, and cognition. Low levels of serotonin have been observed in those with gambling and substance abuse disorders, and may be the reason why there is an increased motivation to satisfy urges. There are also endogenous opioids produced within the body and contribute to feelings of well-being and lessen feelings of pain. Research has shown that individuals with altered opioidergic systems might have greater difficulty controlling desires to continue in addictive behavior due to intense euphoric feelings experienced after engaging in rewarding behaviors. Last but not least, we come to the stress hormone cortisol. Individuals with a gambling addiction have been shown to have slightly higher levels of cortisol within their systems. Slayers, at this point you may be wondering what nicotine and gambling addiction has to do with what Science 2 has become. Rest assured, it is directly related to Dr. Shapiro's tech zombies, who are already suffering from the non-substance abuse of technology. Although Dr. Shapiro created a way to tap into the limbic system of his victims in order to control the tech zombies, there have been sightings of tech zombies everywhere since the development of the first iPhone in 2007. Articles such as this one are being posted on a regular basis in an effort to contain and control those falling victim to technology. It proposes multiple ideas on how to control the amount of time one uses technology and refocus on real-life activities with friends and family. The current tech zombies you will encounter are much too far gone at this time. This particular article discusses how both teens and parents view their own uses of technology and what can be done to treat those already experiencing symptoms of tech addiction. Statistics show that 50% of teens feel they rely on their phones too much. 72% of teens and 48% of parents have strong urges to respond to texts, social media notification, and other notifications. 78% of teens and 69% of parents check their phones almost every hour. 56% of parents also admit to checking their devices while driving. Long-term effects of this overuse of technology have shown a correlation that teens that spend too much time on the internet have a higher risk of developing high blood pressure later in life.
The overuse of technological devices has been found to parallel symptoms of non-substance use disorders. One such symptom is difficulty sleeping due to cell phone use and the light emitted from the device. Light impacts directly upon human physiology and behavior, such as clock gene expression, hormonal secretion, brain activity, and cognition through its alerting effects and/or its resetting properties on the endogenous circadian pacemaker. These effects can be acute, seconds for brain responses, or extend beyond the light exposure, such as hours for hormonal secretion, and display maximal sensitivity to light at the short wavelength range of 446 to 483 nanometers. In the study by Capella, 2013, it was found that exposure to 2 hours of evening blue-enriched light impacted significantly on the temporal dynamics of sleep EEG activity, such that frontal non-rapid eye movement slow wave activity was reduced during the first non-REM to REM sleep cycle. In other words, acute exposure to blue light prior to falling asleep causes less slow wave activity, also known as deep sleep, during the first sleep cycle. Your sleep will not be as deep if you check your cell phone right before bed. Other dangers of technology addiction include cell phone and neck and spine injuries. Text neck is a slang term that doctors are using in reference to a specific neck injury that is occurring more and more often. The best way to avoid text neck is to limit the use of your mobile device. If you need to send a longer email, wait until you have access to a computer or consider calling the person rather than texting. There is also an app available that alerts the user when viewing the screen from an angle that is harmful for your neck.
The road to recovery is possible, as with both forms of addiction. There are several options when it comes to treatment. The pharmacologic approach is still in its early stages. That being said, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs, are most commonly referred to as antidepressants. They've shown mixed results in impulse control disorders. Also, studies using opioid antagonists such as naltrexone and nalmefene have demonstrated efficacy in double-blind trials for pathological gambling. Psychotherapy utilizes several therapy-driven techniques that appear to be efficient when dealing with addiction, especially non-substance addiction like gambling. Recall that technology addiction would be categorized as non-substance addiction. Therapy-driven techniques include cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing, and relapse prevention. The most widely used method in terms of treatment is the self-help group. One such group that you may be familiar with is Alcoholics Anonymous or similar 12-step programs. Though programs like these are meant to provide extra support, they do encounter high dropout rates, and there's little controlled evidence to support effectiveness.
However, in the case of tech zombies, we prefer beheadings. Slayer, this concludes your mission briefing. We have discussed the following topics, and you should accurately know the following information: the definition of substance abuse and its effects on the brain, the definition of non-substance abuse and its effects on the brain, how technology addiction fits into these two categories, a recent study discussing the constant use of cell phones by parents and their children, the effects of blue light exposure prior to going to bed, the dangers of text neck and how to avoid it, and treatment for those addictions. Zombies have been sighted outside of science too. Zombie slayers, you know what you need to do. It is time.
Zombie sighting. You know what you need to do.
Facebook, Twitter, Netflix, season finale, season premiere.
Next time.